Morning, everybody. Chris is yelling at cats right now. I don't know what's going on in the living room right now. Welcome to the channel, Colin. Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. We're going to be talking OGL 1.2 this morning. We're going to be talking Foundry VTT's response. We're going to be talking the PDF itself. We're going to be talking the fan content policy. We're going to be going over a few things this morning. If you've been watching anybody else's videos, it's just a summary. We're going to be doing the summary of this week, what we've been talking about here on my channel and what I've seen in some other people's channels. There's some great stuff going on out there. Roll for Combat's been doing a good job. The Rules Lawyer, lots of great content coming out right now. And of course, all of the interesting conversations happening in the ORC Alliance space. We are a part of that. The Discord channel has a lot of really cool stuff happening there right now. What's up, Brave Steel? One thing I can say is that they have said, and I don't want to speak for them. They'll make their statement in due time. But as far as I understand things, this is just to put this out there before we even get started. The ORC first draft will not contain a morality clause. They have much more important things to focus on. And that's something that is, I think, going to be really good news to many people. Now, some people are going to be saying, "Well, what do you mean first draft?" Well, there's a lot of interesting conversations happening around it. We have 1,500 plus companies and people having discussions about things. So whatever comes out of it will be the best version for people that it can be. But the reality is that everybody who's involved has different worlds and different rule sets. So the ORC, one of the big things with the OGL is sort of like a rule set which they're trying to define through Creative Commons plus the SRD, which it's then the license itself. So there's like multiple different things that go into the OGL, whereas the ORC is completely different. That's just a license. Then each, like Cobalt Games, has their own rule set they're developing. You've got other companies, Savage Worlds is another rule set, and the core rules are another rule set, and all of those different rule sets can exist within the ORC, and any morality clauses, as of the way I understand things right now, are going to be a part of those individual companies deciding what they want to do with their own unique properties. I had a really good conversation, I think, a couple days ago. We were discussing on one of the YouTube videos the idea of offensive content, like who gets to define what's offensive. Offenses change, offensive changes based on the times that we live in. So, go back 100 years, women showing their ankles was offensive. Go back, 50 years. Chris, so this is an interesting. I'm married to a Mexican woman, so I spend a lot of my time in Mexico. I have permanent residency here. Our homestead is in Mexico. I split my time between Mexico and the United States at my brother's cattle ranch in Missouri. And because I have an outsider perspective sometimes because my wife is Mexican and grew up in Mexico, and there's different types of racism that happen down here compared to what happened in the United States. So she's not intimately familiar with all of the, civil rights movements and everything else. And the idea to her that it was illegal, think about this for a minute, illegal for blacks or colored people. I don't know the exact terminology to use, so please forgive me for being politically incorrect. But it is a conversation that she has a hard time wrapping her head around, that not so many years ago segregation existed, and it was illegal to marry someone of a different color, and they couldn't swim in the swimming pools, and they couldn't drink water from water fountains, and they couldn't use bathrooms. That is a foreign concept to my wife because she's Mexican. And so the idea of a morality clause being something that you can define, that's impossible because standards change with time. And as our understanding grows better, those things change. So who gets to define? And that's one of the crucial points that people are picking up on within the OGL 1.2 is they have circled back now, and we're going to read through it this morning, but they have circled back to that being the number one reason that they want to deauthorize the OGL 1.A is that they can protect and counter anything that, and this blows my mind. Content or conduct is the phrasing they use within this document. So they want to be able to police not only the content that goes into OGL specific um, products, but they want to be able to police the conduct of the individuals who are either writing that material, producing that material, marketing that material, being the spokesperson for that material. So they could go back 20 years into someone's past, social media history and say, we find that to be offensive. Well, that wasn't offensive 20 years ago. It might be offensive now, but it wasn't offensive 20 years ago. Who are you to dictate and define? That's the one hang up a lot of people are having about the OGL 1.2. So we'll get into that this morning. But I've had some really interesting conversations with Chris because the idea of a morality clause blows her mind because of, you know, they didn't have the segregation issues here in Mexico that they had in the U.S. That's really it's crazy times to think through. Bravesteel says best hope is to see the ORC structured creator agnostic and system agnostic in a fashion similar to GNT MIT. It's exactly what it looks to be shaping up to be right now. It's independent of it's really just a governing set of licenses for people who want to pool their resources and share a resource pool, and you can be a part of that project. But then beyond that, everybody's going to have a different SRD. Everyone's going to have a different content creator policy. Everyone's going to have a different, fan content policy. Who knows? It's going to be very interesting to see how all this plays out over the next, 6 months, 8 months, could be a year. All right, so we kind of already read through this during a couple of other videos throughout the week, but I do just want to, we'll briefly take looks at things as we go through. If you look at the OGL playtest statements that they made a few days ago, associated with the PDF, which we've got here opened up to go through. Four they have here. Four most important points is protecting D&D's inclusive play experience, talking about and trying to control TTRPGs and VTTs, and deauthorizing the OGL 1.A, because that, according to them, is the only way they can use the protective options in 1.2 to block someone from producing what they consider to be harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content. Also illegal to where? It's an international database of players who play tabletop, and what's legal in one country is not legal in another country. Like, you can, for the most part, as an example, Canada has federally legalized marijuana. It's still not federally legalized in the United States. You go to somewhere like the Philippines and they can, there are very deadly, in some cases, deadly repercussions for even having a seed. So these are complicated conversations to have, and I don't think that any entity has the right to try to dictate based on, what's illegal, what is illegal, based on whose determination, based on what law are we looking at. And then, of course, the very limited license changes allowed. They're trying to dictate how the license changes can work, and it's all in their favor. It's a very one-sided. But perhaps the most dangerous thing about this whole thing for me is the fact that they can, without notice to anyone, completely sever your contract and hold you liable for something that you never physically agreed to, you never signed, you never clicked anything to say that you're agreeing to these terms of service. They claim, and I don't think this will hold up in court. Again, I'm not a legal expert, but these are conversations that are happening around the internet, trying to say that someone is responsible and beholden to a contract because they use something. That's like saying that if I go to Walmart and buy a hammer, the company selling me the hammer is trying to tell me what I can or can't use that hammer for. And if I use the hammer in a way that they don't like, they reserve the right to take that hammer away from me. And it's like, that's not how it works. That might be a crude example, a crude argument, but that's essentially what we're going to. And then there's this whole section about VTT, which I had my own thoughts on the VTT, but then Foundry VTT came out and made some statements the other day, which I think are brilliant, and we're going to go into their response to the OGL today. Brave Steel says illegal is nebulous. It's like trying to imply relative to what law regime they state the license follows, which in that draft states to be the Washington state law. Correct. YouTube has similar clauses which apply relative to California state law. Correct. Mark Hoover says they didn't seem so keen on purity back when, for instance, Avalanche Press release little people with sort of explicit cover art. It's all subjective. Everybody has a subjective idea of what is or isn't, offensive. Some people think that explicit cover art is offensive. I don't. I'm all for R-rated concept art. I love concept art. I like violence in my TV shows. I like grit and realism in my concept art. I like realism. So for me, this was the conversation we were having the other day is for some people, and I've met people in real life who are like this. Some people will not ever watch Game of Thrones because to them, Game of Thrones is an offensive show that is all about explicit violence, gratuitous sex, and all about shock value. They don't consider the story of A Song of Ice and Fire or the brilliance that has gone into writing that work. I'm not going to get into G.R. Martin's time to take to write things, but looking at Game of Thrones as an example, some people consider that to be extremely offensive, and yet on an international level, Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is like one of the most popular intellectual properties of all time because it depicts things in a realistic way. But there's always going to be somebody who disagrees with that, and they're going to say, "Ah, it's offensive." Well, that's fine. It could be offensive for you. There's a brilliant, I think his name is Steve Hughes. I could be misremembering his name, but there's an Australian comedian who lived in London. This is probably 20 years ago now, but he used to have really long hair. He was like a metal rocker, this Australian comedian, and he had this bit on being offended. And it's a really brilliant bit that's like, so what? You're offended. Who cares? Sticks and stones can break me. Who cares? You're offended. That's not my problem. That's a you problem. So trying to define that for people is quite a big problem. So one of the things that they talk about as we get into the PDF document, I love the fact that they have draft like plastered all across this because they're still trying to say, oh, that first version, the 1.1, was just a draft. There was no draft on any of that paperwork, and there were contracts and NDAs sent out with it. So yeah, no, we're not buying that at all. I don't think anyone has bought the whole. It's a draft. The 1.1 was just a draft. No one's bought that story. They have some links in this document which don't work. The VTT policy is not in place yet, but they have a link to it, even though the link doesn't work. They have a creator product badge style guide, which the link is dead. It doesn't go to anything. And then other stuff within here. They also have a fan content policy, which is in place, which we can look at, which is actually the one that's been in place for a while now. I don't know if they're going to be updating the content policy. I had never read this before until all of this kerfuffle has sprung up around the OGL. By the way, I'll get to all the comments here in a minute, but I wanted to get through this before my brain goes in a different direction. So this has been in place since November of 2017, so it's been out there for a while now. So this basically means that you can create fan content, which is stuff on the internet and TikTok and so on and so forth. You can use freely Wizards IP, except for the restrictions listed in number 3, to make fan content that you share with your community for free, and free means free. It's very important terminology that they put here. You can't require payments, surveys, downloads, subscriptions, or email registration to access your fan content. You can't sell or license your fan content to any third parties for any type of compensation. Your fan content must be free for others, including Wizards, to view, access, share, and use without paying you anything, obtaining your approval, or giving you credit. So this is just basically like social media content that you create. It needs to be freely accessible, and then it's acceptable under this kind of fair use fan policy. It says you can subsidize your fan content by taking advantage of sponsorships, ad revenue, and donations, meaning that you can have a YouTube channel, create content on that YouTube channel, earn ad revenue from those videos, earn payments from YouTube for memberships and everything else, as well as donations from people for super chats and super thanks and all those different things, as long as it doesn't lock access to that fan content behind a paywall. That's their big guiding function with the fan content policy. You also have to make it very blatantly clear that it's an unofficial fan content, not endorsed by or sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. They actually want you to include a note. And this is a technicality that I see almost no one ever putting in the disclaimer section of their YouTube videos or TikTok videos or whatever videos. There needs to be a note that specifically says that this is an unofficial piece of fan content permitted under the fan content policy, not approved or endorsed by Wizards. Portions of the material used are property of Wizards of the Coast. Copyright Wizards of the Coast LLC. I don't see anyone ever putting that disclaimer anywhere. And if I had to guess, this is one of the things that's been irking them off is they have so many people out there blatantly not doing this, and so they're trying to crack down on all these things. Don't hurt others. This is about respecting other people's IP. If you don't have the rights to use it in your fan content, don't. If we learn that your fan content also includes other people's IP, such as crossovers, mashups with their permission, we will ask you to take it down. We may ask you. Don't hurt Wizards. Don't use their logos and trademarks. Don't mess with legal notices. Don't use their IP in other games. Don't use their videos or music in your fan content. We know our video trailers are awesome, but use of our videos and music are governed by contracts with third parties. Please don't use any of our video or music content unless you're embedding a video from an authorized third party's website, such as Twitch or YouTube. Well, the reality is that once it's out there, it's free and under fair use, especially if you're going to be doing something such as criticizing, critiquing, discussing thoughts and reactions. That's why thoughts and reaction videos are allowed, because it's a discussion around the piece of content, and they can't try to block that under copyright restrictions because it's considered fair use for the purpose of discussion. Because once it's out there in the wild, that's how you can do fan reaction videos and stuff. No bad stuff. We have the right to stop or restrict your use of RIP at any time for any reason or no reason, including when we think your use is inappropriate, offensive, damaging, or disparaging, and we'll make that call at our sole discretion. So they've been buckling down on this for a lot longer than some people would like to think, because this has been out there for 5-6 years now. 5 years, a little over 5 years. It says if this happens, you must immediately take down your fan content or face the Demogorgon. Haha. Okay. Sponsorships. They don't want you to use sponsorships that could be harmful to Wizards, and you're not allowed to promote our competitors or endorse inappropriate offensive. So you can't promote, I don't know, Paizo in the same video. Crazy. Follow the law of the land. Laws of your region, county, plane, or dimension. In addition to this policy, you must also comply with our terms of use and code of conduct. And you have to agree to all of those. Don't pull us in any legal battles. If our partners, affiliates, or ourselves or employees get hit with any legal claims, fees, or expenses, you're responsible for paying all the costs, including attorney fees. And this is all based on if you make it, you are automatically agreeing to this terminology, whether you knew about it or not. And that's the crazy thing, whether you knew about it or not. And now I'm going to go read some comments here because there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Really can't see anyone signing up to use Wizards of the Coast's poison. They have no right to be the judge on what is offensive or what isn't. I fully agree. Honestly, the fact that we've already got 1,500 plus content creators, publishers, and companies who have committed to helping the ORC, I don't think that's really going to be. I don't know who's going to be left. I actually have a point to make on that, but I'm saving that point for the end of the video today because there is a point I would like to make that ties into that comment. Mark Hoover says subjective is moment to moment as convenient. Correct. Mark says he likes grit 2 up to a point. Man, I love gritty realism. Chris and I have quite different tastes, and she is willing to put up with a lot because I will. But she has lines that I remember, like the first season of Outlander. There's some torturous stuff and some really nasty stuff that happens in the jail cell by that creepy soldier guy who captures him, and there's hammers and violation that take place. And I remember when we watched that for the first time, Chris was just like, oh my god, like if my mother knew I was watching this, like, and it was just like, and then I tried to get her to watch Spartacus with me, which was from Stars, and Spartacus was probably the most over the top thing I've ever seen even today. It was really crazy. And I think she only made it into the end of the first season. Once we got into the second season, she was like, I just really don't want to. That's too much. Like it was just too much because each episode was just a little over the top. So gritty realism is good. I think over the top, yeah, it depends on the person. Speedy says regarding VTTs, who says that the game in my kitchen doesn't involve pyrotechnics and other special effects? If I can demonstrate that, can VTTs now simulate it? If so, we could make a show, possibly. Bravesteel says, remember that VTT clauses can indirectly extend to games and game mods with overlap with the fan content policy and the works covered clause. It's crazy. Everybody, you need to read the paperwork. It's very important, especially in the days that we live in. Anytime you're using software or a website, you need to be reading the terms of service. If you sign up for an account anywhere, they've given you terms of service that you're supposed to click and read, even if it's just like a free account for a forum or something. Read those terms of service, everybody. I know it's 10 minutes out of your day, but it's worth it. Um, that's why we have consent forms. Correct. You're supposed to have consent forms on things. Wasn't a draft. Okay, take your time. Just riffing. All right. Brave still says no one ever puts that because the end it's not enforceable. It literally means that if you make any tangential mention of D&D or Woods branding or trademark product, you will have to credit. Yeah, correct. Greg Phillips says, hey, what's up, Greg? Mark Hoover says, hope poor overworked corporate lawyers. Yeah. Um. Anyway, so there's some craziness in the fan content policy, which honestly, the fact that no one's ever put that disclaimer in anywhere, from a technical legal standpoint, Wizards of the Coast could go after every person who's ever created a fan video on the internet who didn't include that disclaimer, and that's thousands of content creators. They could do that if they wanted to. And I think that's what they're getting at now with these mentions of takedown notices and everything else. I love this here. Down at the bottom, right here, underneath the creator badges, it says Notice of Deauthorization of 1.0L. The Open Game Licensing 1.0A is no longer an authorized license. This means that you may not use that version of the OGL or any prior version to publish SRD content after the effective date, which they're going to put in here later. It does not mean that any content previously published under that version needs to update to this license. Any previously published content remains licensed under whichever version of the OGL was in effect when you published that content. So they're trying to dictate now that the effective date or the date of publication is what's going to bind you to a given version of the OGL. They're going to define, according to this, they are going to define which version that your content is published under based on when it was published. So this is them blatantly saying we are deauthorizing the OGL 1.8. This is them saying that. Now again, legal opinion on this is largely divided across everybody who's creating content around this, because the original intent of the OGL was for it to be a forever free license. And for them, they can this is the thing everyone has to understand. Lawyers do not make the law. Lawyers are there to interpret the law for people. Lawyers are not to be feared. Do not be afraid of lawyers. Way too many people are afraid of lawyers, and way too many people take lawyers' wording as law. It is not law. You do not need to be afraid of lawyers. Lawyers are no different than you or me, private citizens. They just have a specialized training that allows them better qualifications to interpret the law. But at the end of the day, only a judge could dictate what is or isn't law. My interpretation and these 20 lawyers' interpretation of something might be completely different. And when you go to a court scenario, it is up to you or your lawyer to convince the judge of the interpretation that you had and that your party has. That's what lawsuits are all about, is each side putting forward their opinions on matters and saying this is why this is right or this is why this is wrong, and here's the laws that we think apply in this case. And the judge or the jury looks at that and says yes or no. All right. But I see way too many people getting caught up on Wizards said this. They can say anything they want. They can. And they can issue takedown notices if they want. But people can fight back if they want. Or people can choose not to fight back. It's up to individuals out there. None of this will ever be decided until there's actually a court case of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast going up against someone who literally stands up to them and says, yeah, screw you. We don't agree that the 1.0A was deauthorized. We're going to continue to make content for that. We don't know if anybody's actually going to do that yet. Paizo made a very clear statement when they said, we are prepared to go to court. We will go to court if it's necessary, but we prefer not to go to court because it wastes everybody's time and resources. And while we can handle the financial burden of going to court for a prolonged period of time to fight this out, 99%, I'm putting that word in their mouth. They didn't say that percentage. I'm just saying that for the purpose of drama here on the channel. The vast majority of content creators don't have the money to go up against Wizards of the Coast. So Paizo said, rather than have this become a court battle, we'll just create our own open license, the ORC, and we will create this new thing that will include modernized language to ensure that this is an open license forever, like the OGL was supposed to be in the first place. So it's a very interesting thing here, because at the end of the day, this is just Wizards saying they claim that the OGL 1.8 is no longer an authorized license. Whether or not that's true or not has yet to be determined by a court of law. And until it's proven by a court of law, it's not actually deauthorized. That's something very important for people to understand. My opinion. Again, I'm not a legal expert. Consult with your own legal expert if you would like their take on things. That's my take on things. It's very interesting. Getting into the licensed content, a lot of this stuff I don't care about because it's stuff that goes back to previous SRDs and OGLs and stuff. But yeah, we'll go ahead and accept. I don't know that I accepted the other. Foundry VTT has a great response and feedback post that they did for the OGL the other day, and I covered that in this morning's video that went out at 6 a.m. But I want to read through it and talk about it a little bit more right now, sort of to continue our deeper discussion here. Let me check here. Oh, that Spartacus. Apocalypse Dan says, pretty sure that they cannot force a non-consensual implicit agreement. Correct. That's my take on things. Like, one of the reasons that all of our stuff and everything I've ever done online, there's usually 3 to 4 consent boxes that you need to check off before you can ever get to a purchasable product if you buy something from us. And the reason for that is because I need everyone to be 5,000,000% sure that they've clicked. Yes, I understand the terms of service. Yes, I agree to this privacy policy. Yes, I agree to this. Yes, I understand what I'm doing. I have full control of my capacities. I understand. Yes, 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 yes. I have all those in place so that if someone ever attempts to do a chargeback, as an example, or say we didn't get the product and we didn't understand and we were misunderstood, we misunderstood something here, there, whatever, I have a clear paper trail that says actually you did these 5 things before you ever even clicked that purchase button, so that there's a clear line of consent that's happening. That's why signatures are very important on a contract. And trying to have some sort of non-consensual implicit agreement that because you've used this, you automatically agree to abide by these. No, I don't. How many people there are? I would guarantee there's a significant percentage, don't know what it is, but I would guarantee that there's a significant percentage of people like my wife who never played tabletop in her life until 2 years ago. She still to this day never picked up a player's handbook or a dungeon master guide for anything. She played purely digital through Fantasy Grounds. She's never taken the time to read any of the booklets. She just participated because it's part of what what we've got going on with our company. So she participated in the live streams because she's doing art for our tabletop guide and our book series. She agreed to do that because she's awesome and yeah. Anyway, she's never seen any of these license agreements that Wizards of the Coast claims that you automatically agree to if you're playing their product or using their product or cosplaying on the internet. So it's extremely unfair to assume that everyone who's ever come in contact with your stuff understands that there's mountains of legal paperwork behind it, of non-consensual agreements that you're suddenly bound by. Like that's something I would find very interesting. I really don't think that would hold up in court. Um, and also because, like Apocalypse Dan is saying, there are too many instances where a creator might fall outside of the jurisdiction of the court. My wife's Mexican. She's been here, playing from Mexico, and it's not as big in Mexico as it is in the United States. So it's again jurisdiction issues. Um, you may have answered this in the next statement. Dan says, for instance, if a creator in the UK is legally able to contract there but not in the US, US companies cannot enforce a contract with them. Correct. Starfinder is published under OGL 1.8. It'll be decision what Paizo is going to do about it. Hope they manage to relist, reprint. No, they've already made a statement on that, Brave Steel. The statement when they announced the ORC was them stating that they had already made great steps with. Well, I guess you're right. This might not apply to Starfinder, but I think it applies to all of their products. The statement that they made, I don't have Paizo open in front of me. Maybe I should open that so we can go read that real quick. because I do remember they had a statement in there. That might take a minute to load, so we'll see. And then I need to get back to reading the OGL. I'm pretty sure here they make a statement regarding Pathfinder and yeah, here it is. As Paizo has evolved, the parts of the OGL that we ourselves value have changed. When we needed to quickly bring out the Pathfinder First Edition to continue publishing our popular monthly adventures back in 2008, using Wizards language was important and expeditious, sorry. But in our non-RPG products, including our Pathfinder Tales novels, the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and others, we shifted our focus away from D&D tropes to lean harder into ideas from our own writers. By the time we went to work on Pathfinder's second edition, Wizards of the Coast open game content was significantly less important to us, and so our designers and developers wrote the new edition without using Wizards' copyrighted expressions of the game mechanics. While we still publish it under the OGL, the reason was no longer to allow Paizo to use Wizards' expressions, but to allow other companies to use our expression. They have another comment here where I need to find it here. Yes. Paizo plans to continue publishing Pathfinder and Starfinder even as we move away from the open game license. Since months worth of products are still at the printer, you'll see the familiar OGL 1.0a in the back of our products for a while yet. While the Open RPG Creative License is being finalized, we'll be printing Pathfinder and Starfinder products without any license. And we'll add the finished license to those products when the new license is complete. So hopefully that answers your question, Brave Steel. You were saying Starfinder is published under the OGL 1.0a. You said it would be interesting to see what Paizo is going to do about it. That statement right there is what they're going to do about it. They currently have some books that are at the printer. Those books will come out with current language in it. Any new books will have no license in it at all. And then as soon as the new language is finalized for the ORC, they will then put that license into upcoming content that's coming out. OpenD&D says, hello. What's up, OpenD&D? Apocalypse Dan says, I'm also sure that you cannot implicitly waive a guaranteed right, such as face your accusers in court here in the U.S. Those can only be waived by explicit consent, which is why we have the Miranda correct. Civil and criminal law differ on those points. Mark is correct. Again, this comes back to interpretation is 9/10 of the law. This also goes to possession is 9/10 of the law. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you from having run multiple businesses and having to go to lots of different legal processes, my experience has always been it doesn't matter what either side thinks. It matters what you can prove to a judge, and that judge makes his ruling based on the best interpretation that is presented at those proceedings. Whether it's a judge or a jury, that's how it works. So again, I don't really give a shit what people say. What matters is what a judge rules on. And until a judge makes a ruling, it's all just opinion. Lawyers have opinions, private citizens have opinions, companies have opinions. It's all just opinions. I'm probably one of the few people out there who, my brother and I have dealt with enough legal processing over the years between ranch stuff and construction company stuff and, doing 2 different game studios and everything else. I mean, I've spent 20 plus years doing legal stuff with companies, and lawyers are just there to help you do paperwork at the end of the day. That's the way I look at it. They're just there to help you do paperwork and help you understand a few things that you can't figure out on your own and you might need to get a better understanding. I would also highly urge everyone, educate yourselves. Don't just rely on other people to make comments for you. I can sit here and say all I want all day long. Don't believe me. Go out there and form your own opinions through investigative research. That is the best way to stay up to speed and up to date on things that happen in the real world, whether it's this or politics or other thing. Get a international viewpoint. It'll save you a lot of headaches down the road. Open D&D says OGL, but the trademark office is not a contract and cannot be a contract. Correct. You're right about the courts. Yep, I know. Okay, let's go back to the OGL's response here. So since we answered that from Paizo. Okay. They updated this January 20th, which is a couple days ago. I believe I don't know if we covered the January 19th or January 20th edition. New license terms for shared public discussion after several false starts. By the way, if you haven't taken the survey yet, I have not, but I watched Roll for Combat take the survey. There's some questions in there that how has this affected your opinion of Dungeons and Dragons? I thought it was funny that they have that in the survey. Anyway, by the way, I'm going to answer this question before I read this. Draco's Wizard said, "Doesn't matter where you know, only what you can prove in court. Law-abiding citizen." You're damn right, because until otherwise, I haven't broken any laws. Prove it. Prove it. Like it's got to be proven in court. It's great. I love it. It's got to be proven. It's got to be proven. This latest version, OGL 1.2, is a constructive step forward, but it does away with many of the most dangerous clauses of version 1.1, but it is still regressive compared to the original OGL 1.0a. We commend the team at Wizards of the Coast for taking community grievances seriously and for admitting the mistakes that led to the OGL 1.1 and the breakdown of communication that followed. This is a brilliant poke. Wizards of the Coast is now asking for community feedback on the draft OGL 1.2 license terms, but without further effort to engage directly with the creators who would be accepting the license, this survey process may be a hollow gesture. I would also say that it's a hollow gesture because it's over at D&D Beyond, where they force you to create an account, give them your private information, click terms of service, and do many other things before you can even fill out the survey in the first place. It feels like a very hollow gesture to me as well. This article provides feedback from the Foundry VTT team, views which have not been otherwise solicited by Wizards of the Coast, which is why this is a great public statement by the team at Foundry VTT. And if you want to see this in full, I did a video about this earlier today at 6 a.m., but this is just a different read through. Draft OGL 1.2. Despite the improvements, there are still some serious problems. Wizards of the Coast has invited community discussion on the matter, and it is important for us to advocate for our users, our products, and the value that we bring to the D&D community. I need a drink of coffee. There is a particularly dangerous combination of statements in the OGL 1.2, which, unless corrected by Wizards of the Coast, may result in creators unknowingly and non-consensually accepting the terms of this new license, which we've kind of talked about. So they talk about here, by using our license content, you agree to the terms of this license. This is draft OGL 1.2, page 1. Yeah, this is right here, right at the very top. By using our licensed content, you agree to the terms of this license. So this comes in to play when I talk about my wife, who's never touched a player's handbook in her life, but she has participated in live streams where she cosplayed as an elf playing an official Dungeons and Dragons campaign, The Lost Mines of Phandelver, and our own world, which at the time we were streaming it was under the OGL 1.0a. So according to them, my wife, who has never picked up a player's handbook, never read a Dungeon Master's Guide or anything, and has no idea that these rules even exist, they claim that she's automatically bind to this because she's used their licensed content in a way that they deem to be some sort of a transactional moment. That, to me, is one of the biggest grievances I have against this, because you can't do that. You can't have someone be held accountable to something that they aren't even aware exists. That is ludicrous to the point of insanity to think that they want to claim that. Then here, the licensed content. This license covers any content in the SRD 5.1 or subsequent version of the SRD we release under this license that is not licensed to you under Creative Commons. You may use that content in your own works on the terms of this license. Now, this is a very important point that I think Foundry VTT has pointed out, which is the SRD 5.1, which has been in place since May of 2016, if you have ever used that content, or if you continue to use that content, then you are implicitly agreeing to the terms of the OGL 1.2 according to Wizards of the Coast, which means that simply by publishing content that was developed under 1.0a in the SRD version 5.1, you're unknowingly accepting the 1.2 terms. And Foundry VTT says that this could be helped by having, it says this could be avoided, by the way, this unknowing acceptance, this issue with people not even knowing about these things, could be avoided with an explicit grace period for ongoing projects and an obvious version number increase. I don't agree with the grace period. I mean, yes, a grace period is needed. It's not that I agree that, what I mean is that the grace period to me isn't as important as the increase to a version number. Version control is very important in programming and game development. So I think that this is a key component here. I agree with what VTT is saying here, is that if you're going to make people be agreeing to terms for the 1.2 OGL, then that needs to be explicitly tied to a new version of the SRD. So you call it 5.2, 5.5, 6.0, whatever you want to call it. Technically, if it's 6th edition D&D, it needs to be version 6 or whatever it is. Make it explicitly different with an obvious user number increase, version number increase, so that it's clear that the game content you're accepting is this game content under this license. Make it clear. The problem right now is there's too much confusing language, and they're trying to confuse people with legal speak, which is why you see so many videos like me. So many people out there going through this kind of stuff and analyzing it and going, this is ridiculous. Anyway, deauthorization does not apply. The OGL 1.2 perseveres with a dubious attempt to deauthorize the prior OGL 1.A. Any creator agrees to it affirmatively gives up their rights to continue using OGL 1.A. The new license acknowledges that previously published content is unaffected, but attempts to cast doubt into the validity of continued usage of the OGL 1.0 for the creation, revision, or distribution of works. This is a misrepresentation of the text and clearly documented an intention of the open game license. I fully agree with what Foundry VTT is saying here. Wizards of the Coast should instead, God, this is brilliant. They should instead focus on a path forward that incentivizes creators to adopt the new license because it's going to offer superior access to superior game content. Well, these are my words. Superior access to game content, including content for 1D&D, rather than focusing misguided effort and trying to nullify the prior license. I think at this point, if you want your new product to be successful, it needs to be a superior product. So the best way that you're going to get content creators to come to your new product and create content under one D&D is to make it the best version of Dungeons and Dragons that has ever existed since the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. That's how you get people to do it, Wizards. But instead, you're trying to browbeat everybody over the head with these draconian terms and saying like, nope, you can't take down notice. You can't. Nope, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. You owe us 25% of your revenue. You got to license back to us and let us use your content wherever we want. Like, I've never witnessed like a public breakdown quite as dramatic as this in terms of the contract language being so. I mean, it's always, anytime you've ever done, if any of you have never done a negotiation in business, each side is always trying to get the best agreement for them. But negotiation is usually carried out with the understanding that you're going to have to give in order to get. It's a negotiation. No one's going to walk away, winning a negotiation. Both sides are going to get some things they want. Both sides are going to lose some things that they don't want to lose. That's just how a negotiation works. But Wizards came out with the 1.0 leak document, and they just tried to come out and say, these are the new terms, suck it. And everybody went, whoa, 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 whoa. And now they've tried a couple of different times now to try to relax the language. But each time they relax the language, they tighten down other areas, and it makes it worse for them. I mean, at this point, like I said, the fact that they've driven more than 1,500 content creators and publishers over to the ORC Alliance speaks a lot. Even if those content creators aren't as big as Wizards of the Coast, it's the amount of people who are leaving Wizards of the Coast in droves. The new OGL does include the significant term irrevocable. However, Wizards of the Coast has provided themselves with several ways to cancel that license, either individually or in total. So again, they've given themselves all the power in the document by allowing themselves to get out of the irrevocable terminology if they want to. I'm going to check some comments here before we dig any deeper into this. Mark Hoover says, absolutely get informed before going and yelling at Pink Floyd for going woke. It's been an interesting week. I finally get to do a live Enter MCA. Yeah, I tend to do lives early in the morning because so my wife and I have a homestead, so we're constantly doing other stuff. We have another channel that we dedicate to the homesteading stuff. We bought this place October of 2021, moved here in March of 2022. We have another channel where we do all this stuff. So I get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, and the cats, all our rescue cats, get us up. And then I do all of my work. I'm usually done by 11 or noon. I will occasionally stream in the early afternoons, video games, but pretty much I'm done with work by noon, and then I'm out doing chores and other stuff with Chris, and then ongoing video production. So yeah, when I do streams, they're traditionally 8 in the morning, 11 in the morning. I think the latest I'll stream is like I'll start at 11 a.m. and stream until like 2 or 3 p.m. Occasionally I'll start at like 1 p.m. and stream till 4 or 5 p.m., but that's very rare for me to do that. So good to have you here live, Mark. Apocalypse Dan says the basic elements required for the agreement to be a legally enforceable contract are mutual assent, yes. Expressed by valid offer and acceptance, yes. Adequate consideration, absolutely. Both parties need time to consider and to So capacity and legality. The adequate consideration thing is very important because if you've ever done any sort of investments before, the FTC is extremely strict. Like the the federal government has oversight over investors. So when you're bringing investors into your company, you have to give them this form that has so much stuff that they have to fill out to prove that they have absolute understanding of all the risks and that they have considered all of the different pros and cons and that they are 9,000,000% sure that they want to do this investment deal and that they understand what this all means. Um, Consideration is very important for being, especially when it comes to like if you ever have to go to court for anything, which unfortunately I have. um, it's always going to come down to the other the other side's legal party trying to say that you fully understood things, and your argument is going to go, I didn't understand these five things, and the other party is going to be saying, well, we didn't understand these five things, and you're trying to argue about who understood better. It's crazy. If Wizards of the Coast lawyers are smart, they will sneak this OGL into the updated terms of service. That's one thing they may attempt to try to do, and we'll roll it out to everybody on D&D Beyond or any other electronic platform. If you read those and any agreement fulfills consent, yes, which is why I said that it's bullshit that they've got the survey over on the behind an account paywall, not a paywall, but an account wall to go fill out the survey. Like I don't want to make an account with D&D Beyond. Sorry. John Zedek says all this garbage tells me they have no confidence in their brand and product. Well, actually, I think that's not exactly true. They do have great confidence in their product, and that's why they're trying to do this. That's one of the final points we're going to be getting to here in a bit. If it is, they would say our VTT is superior, and everyone want to shift over. Absolutely no problem. Trying to force competitors out of business makes it look like they know their product cannot compete on a level playing field. Sure, this is dictation. Mark Hoover says thanks for the welcome. Yep. So yeah, it's crazy times that we live in. By the way, for those of you who are new, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, drop super chats if you can, stickers, and so on and so forth to support as we move forward. We're continuing to do videos on this, so we'll do more live streams throughout the week. Typically on Sundays, I'll do one every Sunday morning at around 8 a.m., and I'll probably do one midweek as we see new news coming up. I'm also involved. We got our official invitation to the ORC Alliance Discord channel the night before last, so I accepted yesterday. So it's been very interesting to be on the inside now, watching the ORC take place, watching that unfold. Um, I love everything else. Bypasses to the server is not protected. I was not aware of that, Spice King, so that's good to know. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So going back to them, severability gives them the ability to declare the entire license void. This is just them trying to have different clauses in there that allows them to say that this is an unenforceable part of the contract or it's invalid. There's several clauses in here, such as the termination clause, which is the big thing that I focused on during my initial read through of the 1.2 a couple days ago was the morality clause of them trying to say that if we view that your content or conduct is in any way, shape, or form discriminating, hateful, or illegal in some way, shape, or form, we reserve the right to immediately sever the contract and force legal consequences. Um, and it's like that's never going to fly. You don't get to be the morality police, the thought police that dictates what is or isn't offensive for people. You don't get to dictate what is or isn't illegal because you're from a tiny little place in a tiny little state in a country that is one of many countries in the world. So it's like you can't dictate on an international level what is or isn't illegal. So there's some clauses in here that are pretty groovy when you look at them because it's just like you guys are nuts. You guys are nuts thinking that you can lock people down to that. The other one that this is probably not my number one, but it's up there in my top 3 reasons why this is just a joke is the fact that they want you to sign away your legal rights. They want you to sign away your rights to a class action lawsuit, any monetary damages, or any sort of you can't take them to court for any reason whatsoever. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, 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 ever sign an agreement, in my opinion, that requires you to give up your rights. This is in line with what a lot of severance packages will attempt to do. You'll get a severance package from the company where you're working, and in that severance package, part of the paperwork specifies that in accepting when you accept the severance package, you agree to never take that person to court for any reason whatsoever. Same thing with many settlement agreements. Once it's settled, you're agreeing to never pursue legal action for any reason whatsoever ever because of that settlement. They're asking everybody and here's the thing, they are telling you that you're explicitly agreeing to these terms without even knowing that you did so. And people like my wife who aren't even aware that these terms exist, you're explicitly agreeing to these just by use. And part of what you're agreeing to is you've waived the right to a class action lawsuit or any sort of lawsuit for monetary damages. It is, I've never seen that outside of like a settlement agreement, things of that nature. I know that in one of the negotiations we were a part of, the other party tried to get and it was in an an arbitration. They try to force arbitration, and one of the reasons they want to try to force and if you go back to the previous language, they did in fact try to force and say that you couldn't do this, that, or the other. They really want to completely eliminate their chances of ever going to court for anything. And it's just ridiculous to think that you sign away your rights by agreeing to a document that you didn't even know existed in the first place. What? I never signed anything. It's crazy. It is crazy. And then we get to the virtual tabletop policy, which um, Foundry VTT had a good take on it, I think, because they have an explicit. Um, they're in that market. I'm not. I'm not in the VTT market. I publish content for VTT platforms, but I don't have any skin in that game. So this is something that doesn't affect me directly, but it does affect me indirectly in where I might potentially be able to publish my content in the future if I ever want to get official modules created for places like Foundry VTT or Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or whatever. Assuming that I was wanting to create an OGL specific and licensed piece of material, which is good times. Run by a third party that just does servers. That's good to know, Spice King. I was not aware of that, so thank you for correcting that. I may have missed that part when I watched their live stream. So if that's the case, I don't have any reason not to go fill it out now. Okay, perfect. That's good to know. I appreciate the confirmation on that because that was me talking about something that apparently was just a rumor. Um, I had clicked something a few days ago and it was requiring me to do a D&D Beyond thing, and I was like, I'm not creating an account just to go look at something. Um, in any case, the VTT program discussion is interesting because of basically D&D is trying to lock down what can or can't be defined as a VTT. And the one hiccup here is them trying to say that like spell effects are a defining feature that separates a VTT from a video game. They're saying that if it has VFX, then it's getting into video game territory. And if you've put a VFX in there over like a magic missile, well, the magic missile is our trademarked spell, and if you've associated with a VFX with that, you can't, because we reserve the right to define how the magic missile is visually represented as well as how it is described in written form. They're trying to claim that they have that level of control over the copyright of these types of spells, and they really want to get into trying to dictate what is or isn't replication of the dining room table storytelling. And this is crazy because it gets into every VTT program out there has some form of like dynamic lighting, which can be counted as VFX. Tailspire specifically has spell effects. I don't do Foundry VTT, so I can't. Somebody in the comments can probably correct me on this. I've been told there are add-ons for Foundry VTT that allow you to do spell effects and so on and so forth. If that's true, I'd love to hear that. Matter of fact, let's go. While we're sitting here talking about this, I'm going to go open this up and find out because we were just talking about it. So let's confirm really quick. Uh, our survey. Oh, it's not hosted on the D&D Beyond, so I appreciate the clarity on that. We might actually go through this as part of the live stream. What time is it? 9 o'clock? We might actually do that here in a minute. Let's see. Anyway, let's get back to this, though. Foundry VTT says this about the policy. The perplexing focus on animation spell effects is an absurd heuristic as the primary example of what makes a virtual tabletop different from a video game. If differentiating between a VTT and a video game is essential, we contend that it is not. There are far more classifiers to use. Are the actions of a player and non-player character controlled by a human? Does the game experience provide a framework for collaborative storytelling? Can the game master invent new rules on the fly? Surely virtual tabletops and video games alike may both have an animation present in the way they communicate information visually to users. Even if a focus on animation is removed, it is concerning that Wizards of the Coast could choose which software features, are appropriate for virtual tabletop to implement and which are not. The NFT conversation I think is weird too because I kind of feel like the NFT ship has already sailed. Like no one in their right mind is touching NFTs right now. No one. Like that experiment has already come and gone. Maybe it'll spin back around, but not at the moment. Their policy attempts to claim that virtual tabletops should only replicate but never improve upon the experience of sitting around a physical table. Foundry says this myopic perspective neglects that modern VTT software augments the experience of traditional play by heightening the quality of experience for players at the table, regardless of whether the game is played in person or remotely. For many gamers, VTT's software is an integral part of the TTRPG experience and not just a fallback option. This is great. It's not just a fallback option when a traditional mode of play is unavailable. We would have expected a team who are gamers and big fans of VTTs to understand this. So here's a good example. I previously mentioned in the video that we split our time between our homestead in Mexico and my brother's family ranch up in Missouri. As a result, I've been largely remote for many years on many different things. Even prior to this, my wife and I were digital nomads, and we did the travel blogging, public speaking careers for about 10 years and constantly traveling. We're constantly traveling all around the world. And you can't, like, we were always just renting fully furnished apartments. We didn't actually get into buying our own place until we, got into game dev full time. And stopped traveling. So when you're on the road like that, you can't do anything physical. You're always on the road. So the reliance upon virtual everything has been a big part of my life all the way back to like 2008. I went paperless earlier than that, even with like, I don't want bank statements in the mail. I don't want any shit in the mail. I want to be paperless. I only play VTT. I do not play physical games. I can't tell you. Let me think back. When was the last time I played physical D&D? 2017. We were in Austin, Texas for the Austin Game Conference. The last time it was held, we were there representing our game studio for the Saga Lucima MMORPG. So I brought the whole team in. We all went to the conference. We've rented a big Airbnb for our team. And while we were on site, my brother and I had built 3 big old tabletop boards, which we live streamed all of that creation, did a bunch of videos on YouTube and everything else. So we took the tabletop boards to Austin with us. We played D&D with our team using our own world that we were building our MMORPG around. That was the last time I played physical D&D. Was a one shot in 2017. Prior to 2017, I think the last time I physically played was 2005, 2006. I have been all about VTT. Virtual tabletop is the only way that I play, just because of travel and everything else. And being in remote, I live in the boonies. Like, it took us 9 months to get our paperwork for our house, and then we had to wait to get the address assigned. And then literally just last week, I've been here almost a year. We've been here. We moved in here March 15th of last year. We just got our address confirmed on Google Maps Sunday, like a few days ago, Sunday or Monday, something like that. Like it literally took that long from the purchase in October of 2021, October 2021, from the purchase time to mid-January 2023 to get an actual physical address to this place. So even getting physical books delivered here is an impossibility. So VTT has been my go-to for many, many, many years. So I love what Foundry has to say about Dungeons and Dragons trying to claim that that VTT is only a fallback option and should never be better than the physical sit down around a table with physical books mechanism. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I do agree with their statement on things. We would have expected a team who are gamers and big fans of VTTs to understand this. I fully agree with all of that. People have made modules to do that. Cool. Probably worth mentioning I'm a Foundry VTT Discord runner. Awesome, Spice King. Thank you. I don't know enough about Foundry VTT. I've been a Fantasy Grounds fan. We bought the Ultimate license a couple of years back. I really like Fantasy Grounds. I've liked what I've seen of the Forge, and if I join as a player, I'm happy to explore Foundry. But in order for me to do it on Foundry, I'll have to do it as a player because I've already spent a significant amount of money on Fantasy Grounds as a DM. Our company footed the bill for that because it's a tax write-off, but still, um, I got enough change in Fantasy Grounds. I kind of got to stick with them for DMing my own content for the meantime because I have invested so much money in there, buying things and modules and licenses and stuff. Greg says I have run games with lighting, atmospheric effects, and background sounds and music. T.A. Hawkins, because we all disagree that Wizards of the Coast now become a threat to our democracy. Apocalypse Dan says good luck defeating Blizzard lawyers in court when they think that the D&D spells effects are counter or trademark. Also interesting, if they do try to lock that down, I think what Wizards of the Coast is going to try to do is they're going to try to monetize spell effects in their VTT program as a microtransaction. You'll have a base magic missile, which has a base color associated with it, and then you'll be able to go in there. This is a prediction, not fact. I predict that you will then be able to go in, just like with Path of Exile. You'll be able to go in and buy different colors for your magic missile, different skins to make that magic missile look different. All of that's going to be monetized. It'll be microtransaction to hell and back. Spice King says, for what it's worth, someone did attempt NFT characters like the last year or two was a flop, even for MT's time. I mean, it's not a bad reason. It's not a bad idea to have that. I've mentioned this in a few of my other videos. Having an NFT clause in their contract is important, but I don't think it's as important as they have made it out to be. D&D, a couple of stands says, from D&D Shorts videos this morning, it looks like the guy calling the shots on the VTT stuff is not a D&D player and lumps all gamers into one homogenous group. I could totally buy that if that's the case. Foundry is just a single $50 purchase plus whatever content you want to buy, but you're free to enter. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm free to enter whatever content I want. Right, but correct me if I'm Spice King. If I join as a player on Forge, I don't have to spend anything. Someone else has made the purchase to run a game with Foundry, and then I just join as a player. I don't have to spend anything. That's what I'm getting at. If I ever decide to go over and try out Foundry or Forge, it's because I'll join as a player. Because I've spent enough money on Fantasy Grounds, I don't want to go buy a whole other program and license and all the modules and everything else because I've already got that kind of stuff. All right, let's go take this survey, everybody. Let me make sure that are we centered properly, kind of. So since I found out through the course of this video that the survey was actually not locked behind the D&D Beyond account wall, again, apologies for my misconception on that. Let's go ahead and do this live and see. Because I only caught portions of Roll for Combat when they were doing this the other day, and I chuckled because I was at the part where they were asking like, "How do you feel about Dungeons and Dragons?" Let's do this. Thank you for participating in this survey. Before I do this survey though, I am like 4 cups of coffee in. I'm gonna take a quick bio, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do this survey. So, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you can. Join as a member, super chats, all that good stuff. Be right back. Let's see here. Dun, dun, dun. Spice King says you can also join as a GM. Someone just buys the table and the table does not charge. Who is in that role? Who is what role? Gotcha. Correct. As a player, you don't buy anything with Forge. Perfect. I mean, we may see. I mean, if I get to the point where I like, I've seen some videos of people streaming with Foundry, and I like what I see. But because I've made a significant investment into Fantasy Grounds, that's where I stay for the meantime as a DM. But I've played as a DM and a player on Roll20, but I've never done either on Foundry. So I'm aware of them, and I have friends who love them. Just never got into it specifically. All right, let's take this survey. Would you like to provide feedback? Sure. What concerns or questions? Deauthorization. Morality clause. And yeah, put that in there. After reading the proposed OGL, how was your perception of the future of Dungeons & Dragons changed? Much worse. My perception has completely changed that it's much worse. What would be needed to improve your perception? Leave the OGL 1.0A intact. Don't deauthorize it. And focus more on creating a better version of 1DD that brings in new players. Make your product better. Who is that, Christy? Frodo? As long as he doesn't... Alright, is he being cuddle mode right now? How would you rate your level of understanding and level of satisfaction with the Creative Commons Attribute 4.0 International? I have a basic understanding of it. So I'm going to say 4. Satisfaction of it, honestly, I couldn't really care. It's not bad. I'll give it a 4. How would you rate your level of understanding, level of satisfaction with the content found in the SRD that will release under high, very high, because we specifically built our Weave and Void sourcebook around the OGL originally. We have since stripped the OGL out, and it's now system agnostic. We're waiting to see what the ORC looks like. Do you have any comments about Curious? No, I don't have any comments. How would you rate your level of understanding, your level of satisfaction with a notice of deauthorization? So this is, okay, so my understanding of it is high. My satisfaction rating is low. Do you have any other comments? Don't do it. End of story. The 1.0A was always meant to be a permanent open license. Next. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the types of content covered? So this is them asking my interpretation. Do I understand the content proposed in OGL 1.2? Yes. What's my satisfaction level with the types of content? Low, because they haven't provided me enough specific examples. It's like they talk vaguely. They say this only covers TTRPG and books. It doesn't cover all this other stuff. But yet, if you have a book series that's based on your tabletop world, this is when you get into things can still be affected by your tabletop products. And if Wizards of the Coast doesn't clearly define what things are touched and what things aren't touched, then there's too much ambiguity around it. So my satisfaction level is low. What's my level of understanding and satisfaction with the content ownership rights? I have a high understanding of it. Honestly, the content ownership rights, I'm not too dissatisfied with the current language because they've moved all of it to Creative Commons. However, they still try to make way too much claim on specificities. Like magic missile and what a magic missile is allowed. Like their owlbear example is really good because they're trying to clearly decide and define that what an owlbear looks like as well as what it's defined as. And they have some very specific wording in their documentation about artwork that is too similar to their artwork. And I can bet your ass that they're going to turn into a Disney, because Disney does this. Disney will go after people for creating, like if you do any concept art or anything that looks like a Marvel version of Thor or Loki or any of the Asgardians that are in the Marvel films, if you create anything that looks visually anything remotely like their versions, it's litigation time because they have locked down what their version of Loki and Thor look like. And so that's what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do is they're trying to lock down this is what an owlbear looks like. And if you create anything that even looks remotely like ours, then we reserve the right to come after you for that. So am I satisfied with content rights, ownership rights? Not as it's better than it was because they don't have the license back language or anything else. So I will give credit here. I won't give them a completely low, but I'll give them a 2 because there needs to be some more definition in here. Because they're also trying to, I need to fully understand all the rights of everything, and it hasn't been defined yet. How would you rate level of understanding and level of satisfaction? You control your content. I'm okay with that, and it's better than it was. So yeah. How would you rate level of understanding and level of satisfaction with warranties and disclaimers? High understanding, absolutely abysmal satisfaction. Modification termination, high understanding, low satisfaction. How would you rate level of understanding and level of satisfaction with the virtual tabletop policy? High understanding, low satisfaction. I don't leave very many comments, but occasionally I will. Have you used the OGL? Yes, I have. Do you want to create third-party content for Dungeons & Dragons future? Hell to the no. Will you be comfortable releasing TTRPG on person? Nope. Absolutely not. All of the reasons previously stated in this survey. Compared to the OGL 1.0, do you feel that you would be able to continue developing content the same way? Nope. Why do you say that? See previous answers to questions in this survey. How would you rate your interest in using the content creator badge as part of your third-party works? Nope. Although I will say my distinction, here's the caveat. I don't create D&D content. I create homebrew content. I'm not going to be slapping a content creator badge on homebrew. It's my world, my IP. If I was creating D&D branded content for Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance, that would be a different story. I would probably then include that. Like if I was, what is it called? Is it the DM's Guild? Is that where people sell their homebrew stuff set in like the official worlds? I think it's called DM's Guild. If I was creating something for there to try to sell through the D&D ecosystem, then I would want to use the content creator badge. But if I'm creating third-party homebrew, I don't want to touch your content creator badge. Like, no. You can save your answers and come back to it. What other feedback do you have for us? Don't deauthorize. Not give people the choice. All right, so I've officially filled out the survey. It says they're going to make the results of the survey available on February 17th Interesting. Okay. Well, there's more stuff in here about on VTT's side about them trying to rewrite historical intent. Oh man, it's just a nightmare, ladies and gentlemen. Sack the suit, says Wayne. I mean, that's generally the consensus that most people have. Also, waiving your rights to arbitration trial by jury, says Josh Potter. That's like a nope out right there. In my opinion, would make the whole thing null and void. Correct. I won't touch anything that. There's no way in hell. I actually my last contract that I had was I worked for about 3 years for this startup, and I was a contractor for most of those years. But then eventually they switched me over to be doing salary for a year. And at the end of the salary, the company sold to investors, and the investors wanted to move on with it in a different direction, and so I got laid off. And they wanted to issue me a severance offer. It was an insulting severance offer, which I declined, largely in part because not only was it an insulting offer for the amount of stuff, but because I had a big clause in there that I waived my right to do any sort of take any legal action against them in the future. And I was like, I'd never ever sign away my rights to that kind of stuff. Torfin says something about including a demand for the firing of Hasbro CEO and Wizards of the Coast Cynthia Williams. No, I don't. I don't believe that. Sorry, I'm not on the boycott fence. I think that enough action is being taken right now. I think that they made some bad decisions. Those decisions are playing out poorly in the public eye right now, but I do not wish. I am not on board with cancel culture. So if you're part of cancel culture, you can just fuck right off. I think that people are ultimately held responsible for their actions. And if things continue to go the way they are, then they very well may lose their jobs, but they also fully control the ability to turn this around and right this ship. They could. They theoretically still have enough time and they could turn it around and potentially save D&D. It could happen. Will it happen? I don't know. It's doubtful considering they continue to push this OGL 1.2 initiative. So I don't wish them to be fired. I don't think anybody out there should be out there clamoring for people to suffer or to cancel them because you don't like a decision that they made from the top down. We can come out and talk about it like we're doing right now, like why we don't like the decision. We can fill out our surveys. We can protest like everybody's doing. People can cancel their memberships. That's the best way, is to protest with your wallet. If that continues to happen, then they will get called to accountability for this. But I'm not going to out there be promoting people get fired or lose their jobs because everybody out there makes mistakes in life. You can't tell me that you're innocent enough to cast stones. You know, we've all fucked up at work somewhere. And so they have a chance to course correct. We'll see if they do. Spice King says Sam's Guild takes a harsh cut, 50% to one bookshelf on Wizards of the Coast. Wayne Lamb says a true child about combat. No. We need a Magic the Gathering card game with Uno reverse card. That'll work. DM's Guild, not Sam's Guild. Gotcha. Yeah, so I do have some further thoughts on things here because at the end of the day, I think the reason that Wizards of the Coast is doing this is because they looked at their market share, which grew from 15% or whatever it was to 85% over the course of years. I think it actually went from like 40% to 85%. And they looked at that market share and said, there is no way we can fail if we decide to do our own thing and monetize. Because remember, for the CEO, it's all about the monetization of every aspect of Dungeons and Dragons. So if I was looking at this from an Elon Musk startup standpoint, you're going to come in, you're going to clean house, and you're going to figure out a way to make this as profitable as possible. Well, how do you do that? Well, we've got to nail down all of these terms and conditions that weren't nailed down before. Do we care if we lose customers? Yes and no. You obviously care to lose, but at the same time, if your market share is 85%, you can afford to lose a few if you happen to make an unpopular decision, with the understanding that by losing a few, you get the company to the point where you're being more profitable because it's a win for them in their eyes. In the eyes of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, this is about we have to make up the money that we spent over the last couple of years buying D&D Beyond, buying the programmers to build our VTT program and all this other stuff. There are hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent, and they have to recoup those losses some way. So if you look at this purely from the perspective, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm looking at this through their eyes. I don't think they care about homebrew. I think that they have enough of a market share and enough of a built-in audience. Like, what's the actor? Joe Manganiello, I think is his name. He's the famous celebrity actor who's big in D&D. Like, he was just in the press the other day talking about how do you get into Dungeons and Dragons? Well, here's how you do it. You buy the player's handbook, you buy the D&D guide, you buy the Dungeon Master's guide, and you buy the monster manual. There are enough people who just want to play in the Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance and Eberron and Greyhawk, you know, they want to play in those worlds. There's a big enough audience for that I think Wizard is betting on that being a big enough audience and saying, we don't really care about all the non Dungeons and Dragons third party content. Now, personally, I think that's a mistake because third party is what got them where they are today because Critical Role, the Dungeon Dudes, all of these people who became big streamers, most of them were playing homebrew campaigns set in their own worlds. They just happened to be promoting Dungeons and Dragons or the 5th edition rule set. So I think it's a stupid decision on Wizards' part to ignore that. However, again, devil's advocate position, they have a big enough market share that if they can convert enough of the brand loyal people, then the OGL 1.2 pretty much only applies to all of that. And if that's what they're focused on, is locking down these morality clauses and all this other stuff as it relates to anything created within Forgotten Realms and all that stuff within their own ecosystem, more power to them. If they want to create a locked off, dome where you don't get to get through that door unless you'd agree to all these terms and conditions, let them. I don't have a problem with that. They have that right. They have that prerogative. It's their IP. It's their everything. And they can do that. I have a unique take on things because I am a third-party content creator who is one of those individuals who is building stuff with the OGL, much like Paizo and Ouroboros, the War Chief Gaming and Dungeon Dudes and Grim Hollow and all these other third-party publishers. I may not have as big of a product, but when I looked at that, I went, yeah, I'm not signing those terms. No way. The 25% revenue was the kicker for me, and the license back provision. When I saw those come out of the first, the leak, I went ape shit. And if you were following any of our channels, like within the first 3 days, I stripped the OGL out of our source book. I stripped it out of our Patreon. I scrubbed all mention of 5th edition from everywhere. Our 2 websites, our Patreon page, our book cover, the guidebook itself. I immediately made everything agnostic, system and rule agnostic, and there's no license attached to it now. Because there's no way in hell I would be giving any sort of those rights to this company. And looking at them now, if this is the way they want to go for any content created within the Dungeons and Dragons ecosystem, they're within their rights to do that. They could do that, and more power to them. But they just need to understand that the third-party world that helped build D&D into the brand that it is today is moving on without them, and they have to accept that fact. The fact that there's already 1,500 plus companies and publishers and people involved in the ORC Alliance should tell you everything you need to know about what people's feelings are right now on Wizards of the Coast and the OGL. It's as simple as that. Professional responsibility is not the same as cancel culture, though. Cancel culture is the devil's work, but that's the problem, though. Like, it's not up to us to determine whether or not these people get hired or fired, and that's why you don't see me out there telling people to boycott Wizards of the Coast. I don't agree with that. I agree with canceling your D&D subscription, your D&D Beyond subscription, and I agree with not supporting the OGL moving forward. But I have thousands of hours of my life dedicated to Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance, novels, video games, um, tabletop sessions, animated shows, um, huge chunks of my life dedicated to those franchises. I'm not going to abandon those franchises because I don't like what the company's doing right now. I might not choose to work with them for my products anymore, and I might choose not to play their tabletop products anymore or publish with them, but I'm happy to consume their, I'll go watch the film in the theaters. I'm definitely going to watch the live action show when it comes on TV, and I'm going to play the shit out of Baldur's Gate 3 when it launches because I pre-ordered that game 3 years ago before any of this shit hit the fan. Not only that, but any other video games that are coming out, I will buy those and support those. Like, I'm not in the boycott camp. Heavily critical of the OGL camp, yes, not in the boycott camp. But in any case, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm going to wrap up here. I got shit to do around the homestead this morning. Thanks for the support. Those of you who can, don't forget on your way out, you can drop a super chat to support here. You can also join as a member of the channel. We'll have more videos coming up throughout the week. The Discovering Starfinder series is ongoing, and obviously I will continue to report on this situation as I see new stuff come up around it. We'll probably do a live stream midweek. I know we'll definitely do another live stream next Sunday, same time, same place, 8 a.m. Central Time. But in the meantime, stay tuned to see if we do a live stream in the middle of the week. I don't know what day yet. It kind of remains to be seen because I feel like everything's kind of going to be calm waters until the 17th unless they decide to make another statement. In the meantime, here's what I would urge you to do. Don't just sit there on the sidelines. If you want to add your voice to this, get over to Paizo, sign up, get involved in the conversation with the ORC and that open role-playing creative license that's growing. Get over there, get your stuff registered so that you can get an invite to the Discord channel so that you can add your voice to that growing list of people who are helping to make the open RPG license, the orc, the best it can be. I can confirm as of right now, they've said that they're not putting any, there's no morality clause in the first draft. That's not a priority right now. That's something that, individual companies may look at down the road, but you've got 1,500 companies that you're dealing with. There's a lot of stuff going on with those. So get involved with the ORC and make your voice heard. Be a part of that conversation. And hopefully I'll see you in the Discord for the ORC and beyond as we continue to watch this thing unfold and evolve. You want to know more information about what I'm working on with my wife and my brother? It's the World of the Weave and the Void. You can find everything out on our Patreon page. Links are down below. We are the Wandering Hermits LLC. Our source book came out in May of last year. It's digital only. We live streamed the first part of the campaign and the prequel module over the last year up till the end of 2022. So you can check all that stuff out. We also have a point-and-click adventure game. We just did an update for that actually today with a bunch of new screenshots and a book series, which is wrapping up in March. The first book will be out in March, but it's been published in serialized format on our Patreon page. I feel like Dragonlance, it's a lot like Dragonlance stuff. So Torfin says I'm playing BG3 as well. Pre-order, it looks good. Larian's a good company. Hell yeah, Larian's an awesome company. I do not think they need to suffer at all for something that has nothing to do with them. So have a good Sunday, everybody. I'll see y'all next week. Until then, stay safe. Happy gaming. Don't let this get to you too much. Lots of other fun stuff to do. Lots of other great systems to enjoy.